Hello Titan Dev Team. I've got another video for you where we're going to be looking at accentuating the landscape that we currently have. While we've been seeing lots and lots of blockouts that kind of cover individual buildings and elements, I'm not seeing a lot of changes that kind of help make the landscape a bit more defined. Now, as you know, our landscape is built from a height map, which means that we get less and less detail as we get closer to a sheer surface. And we also don't get any overhanging on our assets either. So a way that you can go about building this in or starting to block it out is by going into our modeling mode and starting to add some base geometry to that asset. So I've got a sphere here. I've set the radius up really high, set my pivot location to centered, and I want to make sure I'm in current folder and we go to the right area. So I want this in the Arctic region, meshes, and I'm going to make a folder called landscape, which is going to be kind of a location for where our kind of changes to the base landscape can go. So I'm going to place that here and accept that, and then we can use all of the different modeling tools that we have available to us to start actually kind of tweaking this particular shape. So I want to kind of follow this this path here, so I'm going to use plane cut to reduce that down. I'm going to scale it in a little bit like that. There we go, and let's just push that in a touch more. And then we can also go to our sculpting tools. So I've got grab enabled here, set my brush size to be quite high, and start to really kind of like tweak that particular shape that we've got here. Going a little bit skewy on that one, and let's just kind of like build that in a little bit just to give it a bit of noise. There we go. I don't want to mess with this too much because this is just a quick demo. But we can kind of accept that basic shape. Once we're kind of happy with that, we need to make sure that we name it. So we're going to call this SM_Arctic for the region. And then this is an overhang, so we're just going to do that. And then we'll call it O1 for that particular asset type, and that's going to save it as well. So now we've got that base shape, we can even go in and we could add a material to it. So if we go in and let's do, I think I've got a global material here that's got a nice thick landscape blend. Let's add that in. So at the moment you can see it's not doing any blending to the landscape. So we need to just go in and set our RVT to be enabled. And then we can change the blend distance that's going to start blending out. So we can kind of increase that, soften this up a little bit so that we can kind of start to get a nice even blend on our landscape to our actual mesh. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind with this is obviously this is just a blockout asset, so it does need to be sculpted and finished. When you're doing that, you should remove the geometry that you're not using. So all of this backside stuff here that's not visible, we should remove that. Because again, we are losing a bit of geometry waste when we do this, because we are covering the landscape geometry with this geometry instead. So you should try and make sure that we're not wasting any more than is necessary. Also try and think about ways in which this asset could be used in other areas as well. So, you know, you can build bespoke elements, that's absolutely fine. But just also, if you are building, you know, something that's potentially more generic, try and think about ways in which this could be used in other areas as well. So again, from a biome standpoint, having, you know, some nice markers and identifiers for how this landscape shape can work. It's really important to try and think about it from that perspective. Now, once you've got that base asset, you can then export it out into another DCC like Blender or ZBrush, and you can work on it a bit more. So we can go in Asset, Actions, right click on the asset and export it out to the folder of our choice, and that way we can kind of work on it a bit more and then re-import it back in to overwrite that asset. If you are doing that, make sure that you check out the asset in here while you're working on it and make sure you have it checked back in before the automatic revert tool comes into effect, which is about 24 hours. So just keeping that in mind, that you want to keep your progress posted on there so people know that you're working on it. If you don't want to use the modeling tools in the editor, that's obviously absolutely fine. You can export the landscape patch that you want to work on as a standalone asset. So you can go to File with the asset selected, Export selected, and then export that out as an FBX as well. Then you can add your additional meshes on top. Just make sure that those assets are still centered, so that they're not being imported in, kind of at the pivot point of this particular landscape patch. And also make sure you don't just re-import in the entire landscape, because obviously that data is already there and it can't be changed. So with that being said, hopefully that's useful. I'm looking forward to seeing the ways that you can accentuate and augment the world of Titan. Good luck, devs.